So, welcome back to Black Mama's Birth Village. We have our wonderful guest, Danielle Bridge from ABC Life Support CIC. And I'll let Danielle just do her little intro before we kick off today's session. Over to you, Danielle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again. Danielle Bridge from ABC Life Support. So I deliver physical and mental health first aid training. And today I'm going to be doing a demonstration on choking and CPR for a baby up to a year old.
Fab. And I'm so glad that you've chosen choking because we talk a lot in our group about weaning.
Yes.
And, the whole thing, oh, but I'm scared to hand my baby a little bit of broccoli or a bit of carrot in case they choke. So I'm so glad you're covering that one. But I'm going to literally just shut up now.
Excellent. Thank you, Lorna. Well, first of all, choking is the number one request for information on any course that I've delivered in the paediatric world. So it's the one thing that I think scares parents the most because of the whole weaning process, right? But what parents sometimes fail to understand is that children or babies are well designed, believe it or not. And when they are babies, their gag reflex is a lot further forward in their throat than as they grow older. So actually a gag reflex recedes into the throat of a toddler at about 2 years old. So babies gag an awful lot when they first start eating, which I think is quite scary if you're not expecting it and you don't recognize it. So quite a lot of parents get confused between choking and gagging because it looks quite disturbing. Ironically enough, to them, it's not very disturbing at all because babies normally gag, which is that sound, and they bring something up and they're quite disgusting, to be fair. They normally eat it again. if my children's experience or anything like that anyway. So they'll carry on and they're not really too fazed by it. So the first thing is to recognize what an actual choke looks like. So when a baby's choking, first of all, there's no sound, all right? None whatsoever. And we're talking about full blockages here. So the food has entered into the throat and the throat has spasmed around it and there is no room up or down, all right? So that child cannot get this object out through the top or back down. And that means they're not getting any air. And we've got a problem because the human being needs oxygen at all times and we can survive without it for up to about 2.5 minutes. So we do have to think about this with a sense of urgency. So we recognize babies choking by them not breathing, not making any sounds. Maybe their hands are quite tight, their eyes might start bulging, they might start shaking. And if you're looking for changes in colour, looking on the inside of the lips, all right, or their face might darken with a lack of oxygen. So we have a bit of a situation on our hands. Now, with a baby, it's super important that we take the child out of their high chair or wherever it is they're sitting and grip them under the chin. So I'm just going to kind of show up the camera what I mean by that. So it's kind of a safe space under the chin, all right? And then we need to tilt the baby forward with the bottom above the level of the head. And that's important because we're going to use gravity to hopefully pull this object towards the ground. I'm going to take the top part of my hand only and place it in the middle of the baby's back, and I'm going to deliver back blows. Now, I'm a black woman. When we hear the word blow, you know it's quite hard, right? And that's a good thing because it has to be hard, not tap or slap. It has to be hard enough to dislodge it from the baby's mouth. So what I'd like for you to think about when we're looking at this is trying to get ketchup out of a glass ketchup bottle, all right? We're trying to get that ketchup to the neck of the bottle and then come out onto your chips. So that's how I'm going to deliver this blow. I'm going to hold the baby in a nice safe position and I'm going to deliver that back blow. 1, 2, 3, and I can look, 4, 5. That sounds quite hard because it is. And actually often on these courses, people go, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do that to my baby? I said, if your baby's choking, trust me, you'll do that because you understand as a human being what the lack of oxygen can do. So you panic. And what I don't want people to do is to do it quite softly once. And then by the time they get to number 5, and that's the one that causes it to pop out. So focus. And it's people often say how hard you have to hit them. The best way for me to explain that is if it's a baby, I tend to use that part of my hand and the strength in my hand only. As we get older, we use the hand and the forearm. If it's an adult, and hopefully this will resonate with you, if it's an adult, you put your hand, your arm, your shoulder and your entire generation behind this, right? And you come in.
All the ancestors are coming.
All of them come in to help dislodge this object from an adult's throat. So you can understand kind of the severity of back blow depending upon the size of the child. Now I've delivered 5 of these back blows and it has not come out. So what I'm going to have to do now is to place the baby down, and hopefully you can see kind of like an angle with my leg. 2 fingers in the middle of the chest, and I push towards the chest. And I'm going to come to the camera just so you can see that in a bit more detail. All right. This is pushing up under the diaphragm, under the diaphragm, pushing on the chest to expel any oxygen sitting in the lung to push the object from the bottom up. And that's what a chest thrust is for. So you might have seen on TV abdominal thrusts, people run in and they kind of squidge up somebody's belly and it pops out. First of all, it doesn't work like that, but what can I say? Who am I going to spoil TV for? If we did that on a baby, we'd cause all sorts of irreversible damage to their stomach. So that's why we do chest thrusts on babies. And that's the difference between the 2. If I've done 5 of these and it doesn't come out, you go back to your back blows. All right? You keep going. Now, obviously, if at this point someone's in the house, get them to call for an ambulance. Because if I have to do just 1 of these, this baby should be seen by a medical professional, even if it comes out anyway. So 3, 4, 5, nothing, and you keep going. I hope with every hope in my possession that it comes out. Because if it doesn't, what happens is babies become floppy and unconscious. And if they become unconscious, we need to do what we call CPR. All right? So CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation and is designed to keep the brain oxygenated. Hopefully an ambulance is on their way. And actually one of the really good things that we have with the use of our mobile phones and the connection to them is that hopefully by now 999's been called and they're on loudspeaker. All right. So we can talk them through everything it is that we're doing. So baby's gone floppy, the back blows didn't work, the chest thrust didn't work. So we now need to deliver CPR. So I'm going to put my mouth over the mouth and the nose. I'm going to tilt that head slightly upright. I'm going to try and blow oxygen, but there's none going in because there's still a blockage. So I take 2 fingers in the middle of the chest, which is just kind of under the armpits. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. 10, and then I take 2 fingers and blow. The oxygen's going in. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. And I don't stop doing this until the emergency services arrive, till baby starts crying, moving around, or until I'm exhausted, in which case I'm going to get somebody else to try and help me. All right? And that's CPR. It is a scary prospect, and I appreciate that this is quite a difficult thing to watch. I do appreciate that. And it's a difficult thing to kind of comprehend, but it is super important that we understand and recognize what to do in the event of an emergency. And this is the overall emergency. So remember, takeaway is gagging is completely normal and natural. In fact, we probably wouldn't have continued as adults if we didn't have that gag reflex, right? It's super important. We recognise the difference between choking and gagging. We know how to deliver back blows on a baby if that happens. We also looked at how to deliver chest thrusts on a baby if that didn't work. We repeat that cycle 5 times each until it either comes out or until baby becomes floppy. And if they do, you do exactly what it is I've just told you, all while having the emergency services on the phone talking you through it. I hope you never ever have to do it, but if you do, have confidence in your ability.
Danielle, that is amazing. I think I've held my breath through all of that.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing to look at, but as you've seen from that demo, if we have the understanding, the knowledge in our heads, as scary and as difficult this is, because I always tell people, you know what? After events, you can fall apart. Afterwards, you can do what you need to do. But in that moment, we need to figure out what we've got in our head that can help this person in front of us. And You know, Lorna, I've had people over the years say to me, oh, but I can do it on anyone else. But if this was somebody that I knew, or if it was my child, I think I'd freeze. And I answer that question the most diplomatic way I can, which is, first of all, you don't know how you're going to react until it happens, because we don't know the effect of fight, flight, or freeze responses. And I know this is going to sound a bit whatless, but I don't care. But if this was my child, you can bet your bottom dollar that I have more invested, which means I'm going to give it everything I have for this one, perhaps more than I would somebody else that I didn't really know. And I know that sounds a bit dodgy, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get as much of an outcome as I can for something that I've invested in, rather than somebody else.
Yeah, and I hear you about those back slaps. I know parents are like, oh, I can't. But it's like, even when, as a postnatal doula, and I'd be working in somebody's home and like, oh, they're always telling me, show me how to win this baby.
Yes.
And because when I say, well, you show me first, and when you see the little, I said, but you're massaging. No. You've got the baby nice and stable. It's not like you've got the baby dangling in the air and you're applying back. The baby's beautifully stabilized.
That's it.
And it's going nowhere. So get the slap going.
That's it. Yeah. Have confidence. You can deal with anything else like that afterwards, right? It's the oxygen thing that we need to kind of get our heads around.
Yeah, and that's quick, as quickly as possible. Yeah, no waiting around. That's great. That's a great demo. I'm not sure I've ever seen the chest thrust before. So that's great for me to see that.
Oh, good. Yeah. Do you know what? People have done this before, but they've never gotten around to actually doing the chest thrust. They've gone hell for leather, if you like, over the back blows, and it's worked. And so people say to me, oh, I've never seen this before. When my child choked, I did this and I did that, or I might have held them up and done this, and is this the wrong thing to do? And I say to them, is your child alive? They're like, yes. I said, well, it wasn't the wrong thing to do. It worked, right? There are perhaps more modified ways of doing it, which are a little bit more safer, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what you did, that kind of saved the kid's life, that you did it wrong.
The child's alive,
it's just people will do what they need to do. Yeah,
absolutely. And safety, if that weaning time, I know it's a precious time and people get a bit freaked. Baby-led weaning and giving the baby like foods to hold, but it's meal times as much as you can. I know it's hard to do. We advise shared meal times and keep an eye and don't turn your back. Not always possible. I know that. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
But is the time that if you can sit down with your little one and share a meal time.
And actually, it's interesting you mentioned about sharing a meal time, because that was something that I found quite interesting when I was bringing my children up. When they were weaning, I would chew their food and give it to them out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. And people would be like, that's disgusting. How can you do that? That's disgusting. And I'd be like, what do you mean? It's my mouth. I gave birth. I carried this.
Your child has come from your pen. What are you talking about?
Do you know what I'm saying? Actually, I'm glad you said it, because that's what I normally tend to go in with. So let me just say, this child come from there, and you're thinking, anyway, So, and I'd be like, why do people find this so interesting, fascinating? We didn't have, I'm from St. Vincent, and I said to people, I'm sure my mum, when she was growing up, didn't have John Lewis, with like a food processor and all kind of things.
No blenders.
This way, and we do it this way, and it's the most natural way to chomp down your food and know if it's too salty or whatever it is, and then pass it to your child. Mm-hmm. So that's how we do things. I find it quite fascinating still here, that is such an alien, or what's the word? It's removed. It feels quite removed, that process, when we're feeding our children. It's removed, but it wasn't for me, because I lived that life. But it seems quite removed, and we're kind of separate from that process with our children. So enjoy the weaning stage. It doesn't last for very long, and it's such a beautiful time of sharing and them learning and their little mouths. And I remember my son wanted to give him a mango, and peel the mango, took off all the seed and the majority of the flesh, and he was left with the seed. Now, when I was little, the seed was always my favourite, and I'm talking like when I was 8, 9, 10. My mum would give me the seed, or me and my brother would fight over it, and we'd have to, and you pull your teeth on it, and he had like little gnashes. And I remember putting him in the bath, right? It's an empty bath. It was summer, an empty bath with just his nappy on and the mango seed. And I tell you what, I wish I'd have filmed it because he had such joy shoving it in his face. I mean, it was all over his hair, his little body, everything by the time we'd finished. But he'd eaten this mango. So I loved the weaning phase. I thought it was a beautiful time in their life as kids.
It is a beautiful time. I used to feed my grandkids from my plate. That's how I was brought up.
Yes,
We eat from
yes.
the same plate. And yes, they daub their mucky hands in your food, but it's all part of it. They're part of you,
Yes,
they're
yeah,
all
yeah,
part of
yeah,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
And what's really important as well, Danielle, is that anyone who's caring for little babies and children needs to be doing first aid training. It's not just about the parents, right? So if there's grandparents, other people, friends and family, childminders, everyone needs to know.
They do. And I'm glad you brought that up actually, because if you are a childminder or a nanny, or anything like that, then childminders, not necessarily nannies actually, because they're outside of the realms of normal early years or Ofsted requirements in terms of first aid. But they have to have first aid training to do their job. But grandparents don't. So actually, some of our courses have been in private homes where grandparents have been encouraged by the child's mum or dad who are going to go back to work they're going to be looking after the children. The grandparents are going to be looking after the kids, and so they asked to go on a. In fact, I've had an inquiry about that over the past couple of days. She's going back to work. She'd like her mum and her dad to go on a quick first aid course,
Yes.
to learn the basics, just so when she's not around. And so that's applaudable, right? But yeah, you're bang
Yes.
on. Everybody involved in this child's life should have a modicum of understanding of what to do in the event of an emergency. It's super important.
Absolutely super important. So let's take us on to the next demo. What next?
Well, in terms of the demo for this one, I've shown you the CPR for this one. There isn't any demonstration really, other than the fact that we've looked at CPR and we've looked at the choking. We've got an older child, but this is just to show the difference between the older children, if anybody out there has got any older kids. Because I always think, it's all good and well having the baby, but if you've got a child at home, if any of you, your listeners have got children at home who are older than that, then the protocol might be slightly different. So I just want to show a quick protocol and demonstration on an older child, and we call this one, in terms of the age, from 1 year right up until 18. So this mannequin is kind of modelled, if you like, on maybe a 5-6-year-old.
Okay.
And so, and anywhere, but it could be a toddler, and again, that's another thing. It's, babies versus children. Well, actually, I've seen some babies who might require this protocol, but I've also seen some babies who are older than 1, but are tiny, so a bit preemie. So therefore, the protocol will be the one I've just shown you. So if it's an older child, the differences between choking, the protocol for choking is that you don't need to worry about their neck because they're fully developed by now, but you just lean them over your lap, all right? And instead of just using the hand, you need a little bit more juice. So you need this part of your hand in the middle of the back, and that's when you deliver those back blows. I'm not going to hit it too hard because it's very loud. So you'd bring a little bit more of your arm involved now, and you bring that right down into the middle of their back. And if it doesn't come out after 5 of these back blows, then this is where the difference is. Instead of the chest thrust, you have to deliver an abdominal thrust. An abdominal thrust is between the belly button and the bottom of the rib cage. So between that space there. And you get your fist like so, and you hold it in the middle. This is the part where I'd need to lean the child forward, and I'd either sit down or kneel behind this child, lean them forward, and then bring my hands round. And I'm looking for a movement that's in and up. And you might have seen this on TV. So this is where you see your abdominal thrust. What normally happens is somebody does this, it flies out their mouth, and then they sit down and eat their food. No, it doesn't work like that. If I have to do one of these, then this child needs to be seen by a medical professional because I've effectively squashed all the stuff in there, all right? But this stuff is not as important as airway problem. And this is an airway problem which stops from breathing, and we need oxygen. It can last for about 2 to 3 minutes, which is what I mentioned earlier. So you do the abdominal thrust, and if it does not come out, then you go back to the back blows. All right? This is for older children. You just fling them over your lap and in the middle of their back. Doesn't come out, back to the abdominal thrust. If it does not come out and this child suddenly flops in your arms, Then you need to place them on a flat surface, and that goes with anybody for CPR. It has to be a flat surface. And because they're a child, I'm going to deliver some mouth to mouth. So I'm going to open their mouth like so. It's not going in because we know there's a blockage. One hand in the middle of their chest. This time I'm going to get up a bit because I need a bit more oomph, and I'm going to push down. 6, 7, 8, 10. It's 100 to 120 beats a minute. 30 chest compressions followed by 2 breaths, and that's for both age ranges. So I'm going to assume I've done 30. I'm going to now tilt the head back. Oxygen's going in. But this child is still unconscious and not moving. Unresponsive and not moving, sorry. So I'm just going to keep doing CPR. Ambulance has been called. I do 30, tilt the chin up, and I keep going. I keep going with CPR until they wake up, the ambulance arrive and tell me to stop, or until I'm exhausted, in which case somebody else can come along and give me a hand. So today's demonstration, it's all about that basic life support. It's about keeping somebody going or oxygenated until the emergency services arrive. And for this demographic, the most common reason for that will be choking, which is why I've shown you both of those two things together.
Perfection. I've got so much out of that, and I've done a few of these courses as a again, being a postnatal doula, but you've taught me something new, which I love. Thank you so much for that, Danielle.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Black mamas, I'm telling you, get onto this, and not only you as parents, but also those who are caring for your little ones. If you've got grandparents, for example, having your little baby overnight or for a few hours whilst you do your thing, then grandparents also need to access this training. We've got to keep our babies safe, right?
Absolutely, yes, we do. We want to try and do as much as which is within our power. So that's it. Go on a course, learn some stuff, get on the e-learning if that's an option for you. Talk about it, have conversations, run through protocols, double check those telephone numbers, all that kind of stuff, and you're winning.
Yeah, be prepared. And as Danielle said, she has an e-learning course on her website, and we are going to nail Danielle down to get a lovely discount code for you all. So get yourselves booked on. Get your carers of the baby booked on, so that we're all safe. Thank you so much for that, Danielle.
Pleasure.
Should bid you goodbye, and thank you again for such wonderful sharing. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, cut this last little bit out.